Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial, we're going to create this 3D coffin tumbler using a coffin sleeve and a handle from Dimensional Drinks. The first thing that we're going to do is attach our tumbler sleeve to our 24-ounce plump from the Tipsy Magnolia. I'm going to put a good bit of epoxy on here, probably about 3 milliliters or so, just so it's thick enough to really grab a hold of the edges or the inside of that sleeve. And then I'm going to set it upright on my silicone mat and just allow it to sit there until it cures. I'm really sorry. I don't know if I didn't hit the record button or if I deleted footage by accident, but I did attach the handle to this using epoxy as well. Actually, while the sleeve was drying, I went ahead and added that on with my extra epoxy, placed a piece of tape over top of the handle to keep it in place until that cured. Once both of those were dry, then I'm going to spray paint, which is obviously this beautiful sage color from Rust-Oleum, and add on a very thin layer of epoxy. This is pretty large in comparison to just putting a thin coat of epoxy over a tumbler, so I probably used about 3 milliliters of epoxy in total. Make sure that you get into all of those crevices and you get around the handle really well, and you can make sure that your coverage is even and streak free by just dabbing your hand all over the tumbler and the sleeve. That gives it a little bit of texture and takes all of those streaks away, so you can go right into adding on your glitter. We will be using Eucalyptus and Remington from PDB Creative Studio. Every single time I make a three-dimensional tumbler, I say, next one, I'm going to use a fine glitter instead of a chunky, and here I am using a chunky mix. I can't get away from using these chunky mix glitters. I love them because there's so much depth and dimension, but it really truly is best if you use a fine glitter, like a .008 cut, I believe is what it is, because of all of the corners or creases that you typically don't have, of course, on a just straight tumbler. So keep that in mind whenever you are working with these. If you use a chunkier glitter, then you are going to have to give this a couple extra coats than you typically would on a regular tumbler. It is best if you go with a finer glitter so you get that nice smooth coverage. It goes over the edges very well as the epoxy when you apply it on top. For our ombre, we went heavy around that top rim and then allowed the glitter to fall down towards the center and a little bit up into where we're going to use our Remington. If you get that first color, just the ombre effect really well, then the second color is going to be a breeze. If not, then you can very lightly go in with each coat and then go over once again and again if that's what it takes to get that perfect ombre blend. Knock off any excess, and I patted the glitter down so it's flat. I gave this 2 coats of epoxy, sanded it really well, and then another coat of epoxy before we add on our decals. I grabbed this cute floral scaly image from Etsy, and I am using the TECKWRAPCRAFT Printable Vinyl. As you can see, this is literally the best printable vinyl that I have ever used in the past 3 years. I was stuck on the Buttercraft printable vinyl, but this TECKWRAPCRAFT really topped the cake with this one. It weeds so smoothly. The colors are so vibrant when you print on it, and there's none of that like dusty residue left behind. If you've used a print to cut feature before on printable vinyl, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's these pesky little like paper dust bits that come all around your printable vinyl whenever it cuts. You do not have that with this TECKWRAPCRAFT. Now, the last time that I used this in a tutorial, they had just debuted the printable vinyl line, And at that time, they had matte white, glossy white. Matte is my favorite, but they did have the matte glossy. They also had a holographic print and a holographic laminate sheet. The laminate sheet is to use over top of this vinyl if you want to use this and put it on a cold cup or a glass beer can, Libby can, whatever you call it, and you did not have to seal that in with epoxy. However, they have really expanded their line of printable vinyl, and they even have some glow in the dark available as well. So I'm excited to try that, and I've got to get my hands on some of the glow in the dark printable vinyl because I think that would be really awesome for some Halloween cups coming up. I have not yet sealed and epoxied over this decal. I'm going to go straight in with some full glue from Southern Belle Glitter, and really I only did this because whenever I sanded before my decal, or before the coat of epoxy before my decal, when I sanded the cup, I sanded too far. I'm pretty used to using a low grit like 80 or 120 to sand my cups after I give 1 or 2 coats of epoxy, and I'm using this chunkier glitter. And then I go in with a higher grit like 320 or 400 to smooth that out before I add on another coat of epoxy. You really can't use those low grit pieces of sandpaper on 3-dimensional tumblers or items, whatever you're working on, because it really can knock down the glitter over the edges. So don't be like me. I'm trying to get better at grabbing the right piece or right grit of sandpaper for these dimensional cups. But make sure you use a higher grit such as 320 or 400 when you do sand, so you can sand a little bit. It's not going to eat through too much of your epoxy and your glitter and go down to that sleeve. Use that higher grit sandpaper, sand just a little bit, feel around, wash it off, make sure you haven't went too far, and then you can go in again. I'm just roughly going to place my full glue over top of those problem areas that I had, and I'm going to dry that up with my heat gun. This glue is super tacky, so I'm going to trim off a little piece of my full and just go over those tacky areas. I'm using both Olivia and Neon Floral Fools from Southern Belle Glitter. I'm going to repeat those steps until I'm just happy with the way that it looks. If I could do this over, I would definitely only use Olivia. My idea of using the Neon Floral was to just kind of tie everything in together and make some of those colors from the image pop, but I really feel like it took away from it rather than add to it. Where Olivia just played with the glitter colors really well and blended in while at the same time giving it a little bit of a rustic look or distressed. Once I have finished adding on all of my fulls, if you have used the full glue or any sort of adhesive for your fulls in the past, you know that there can still be some tacky areas that the full doesn't stick to or that you just left by accident. Well, Southern Belle Glitter has a really good solution for that, and that is full dust. You take that full dust, you can dump it on your cup if you wish, and then just take a makeup brush, paintbrush, and brush off any of the excess and allow that to come off. Or you can take a brush, dip it into the powder, and brush that on over the areas that you used your full glue. This is going to stick to any areas that are still tacky and fill in those spots that your fulls did not. It does sparkle, so all of these areas that it attaches to or adheres to will have a nice shimmer to it rather than just like you painted on some black spots. Once I have finished adding this on, I'm going to dust off all of the excess, seal this campion twice with Rust-Oleum matte clear coat, and then we will give this a final coat of epoxy. For that, I'm using a little extra ink regular epoxy. Now you can use their fast set as well on three-dimensional objects because both their regular and fast setting epoxies give you a very long work time in comparison to other fast sets that I have used and had some issues with it setting up a little bit too quickly on me before I could get my three-dimensional tumbler epoxied. Simply because it has so many edges, I want to make sure that everything's nice and even, and you can't just slap it on like you would a regular tumbler. It really helps that it's a thinner viscosity epoxy, so it does flow a whole lot better than a thicker viscosity, and it helps you get into those corners and crevices without getting your epoxy too thick in those areas. Like I said, I do wish that there were a couple of things I did differently on this one. When it comes to these tumbler sleeves, I'm really trying to think outside of the box. I'm learning a lot as I go, and I'm so happy that y'all are following along with me. All materials I have used will be listed in the description below, along with links and coupon codes for you. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out in reaching a larger audience and teaching others as well. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next time.